Oh, hey there. Welcome to Cardboard Brewing Company. Removal is a core part of Commander, so you're going to make sure you have a... Oh, you're looking for something that your play group hasn't used as removal before. I can help with that. Let's start with a card that looks really expensive out the gate, Murderous Cut. Murderous Cut costs 5 mana, which is a lot for a removal spell. I never want to pay 5 mana for this card, but thankfully, Murderous Cut has the ability Delve. Delve is a really cool ability where you can exile cards out of your graveyard, and for every card that you do, you reduce the cost of the spell with Delve by 1 colorless mana per card. Meaning, if you cast Murderous Cut and exile 4 cards out of your graveyard, Murderous Cut only costs 1 black mana. And the benefit here is that Murderous Cut says destroy target creature, whereas a lot of black removal says destroy target non-black creature when you get into the cheaper removal spells. Even though there's a cost of exiling cards out of your graveyard, the cost is so minimal when you could just spend 1 mana to destroy a creature. We all love Swords to Plowshares and Path to Exile, 1 mana removal in white. Now, the benefit in white is that you're exiling the creature. That's way better than destroying for sure. But Murderous Cut has no downside with the spell, whereas Swords to Plowshare and Path to Exile, you're giving your opponent either a land or some life, which, aren't that big of a deal, but I'd rather give them nothing. So Murderous Cut is a really cool include if you've got cards in your graveyard. And that's where the cost of Murderous Cut can get really interesting, because if you're not putting cards into your graveyard, it can be hard to cast this thing for its cheapest rate. But under the right circumstances or in the right deck, Murderous Cut is a slam dunk. In any deck that's running black, after you get board wiped, Murderous Cut is awesome because you can now destroy the creature of the player who wiped the board and equalize everybody again, right? It's a really common thing that somebody will wipe the board and then play a creature out right afterwards so that they have the advantage on the board right now. But if you can respond to that by using other cards that just got board wiped and they're in your graveyard now and remove that creature, then now the advantage is sitting on the next player, which could be you. Depends on the turn order, obviously, but at least takes care of the player who board wiped and then set up to have the advantage. Murderous Cut is also awesome in specific commanders that have niche uses for your graveyard. Think of things like Tassiger, where you want to get rid of the junk cards out of your graveyard so that you can get better hits with Tassiger's ability. Or you got Taval, which makes you zombie tokens whenever you get rid of cards out of your graveyard. So delving cards away lets you get a bunch of blockers up, and you get to get removal at the same time. Imhotep's in the same vein here, just like Taval was. It's mono black, but you get 2/2 artifact creatures, which is kind of cool. And Sir Conrad, where you can use the Delve on Murderous Cut to use Sir Conrad's ability to ping all of your opponents for 1 damage per creature that you exile out with the Delve. There are other decks where Murderous Cut will do awesome things based on the theme of the deck, but any deck that's running black can probably make use of this card unless you're actively trying to not put cards in your graveyard. I think Murderous Cut's a really good include. Give it a shot. Let me know how it goes. Next up is a card that came out in a Commander set, and it makes sense because the ability on it is very Commander focused. The card is called Curtain's Call, and it's a 6 mana removal spell, which is more expensive than the last one. But as you could probably guess, there are ways to make this card cheaper, and in this case, the way you make it cheaper is by having more opponents. Curtain's Call has an ability that says Undaunted, that this spell costs 1 less to cast for each opponent you control. So in a standard game of Commander, you're going to have yourself plus 3 opponents, which means that Curtain's Call costs 3 mana to cast if all your opponents are still in the game. And when you cast the card, you get to destroy 2 target creatures. And any card that gives you a 2 or more for 1 card is probably a good card. Being able to spend 1 resource to get rid of multiple resources from your opponents is a really good thing. Now, this card goes way down in value the more players that are eliminated from the game. Nobody's going to be paying 6 mana for the spell because it's impossible. You always have 1 opponent. But nobody's paying 5 mana for this spell either. 5 is really tough to pay when you need to get rid of 2 things. I'd rather pay a lot cheaper rate for that. But if every opponent's still in the game, 3 mana for 2 creature destructions is really good. It's really good value. It's pretty hard to beat that on 1 card. This card's a great way to slow down multiple opponents at once. If you need to hit a creature from 2 different players to slow them down, it's awesome at that. And it's also really good at severely hindering the player that's going out of control on your board. If you guys are playing Arch Enemy... If you're playing Arch Enemy right now against 1 opponent, Curtain's Call is a great way to start equalizing the board. And I can't forget all you crazy people out there who are playing Commander with 5 or more players in the game. I can't do that. The games are too long. But this card goes nuts when you've got 5 players in the game or 6 players in the game. Then the value is insane. So for those of you who have play groups of more than 4 people, maybe consider this card. And the last thing I want to say about this card real fast is just you have to imagine a game where you cast this card on turn 3. and you blow up two separate players' commanders. Turn 3-ish, turn 4 around there is a pretty average time for players to have their commander on the board. Curtains calling two commanders that early is just a blowout. It's crazy. I found out about this card a long time ago, and I really think more players need to give it a shot. It's called Drugar Hedgemage. It's a 3 mana, but it's in Boros. That hybrid Boros mana is really interesting. It's a 2/2 that when it enters, if you have 2 or more mountains, you get to destroy an artifact. And if you have 2 or more planes, you get to destroy an enchantment. So this is a 2-for-1 on a card again. It requires just a little bit of setup. You got to have 2 mountains and 2 planes in play. But if you're running a Boros deck, you're probably going to have that. When you get into 3 color, it's a little harder to hit this, but it's not that hard. 4 color and 5 colors where this starts to fall off, because having 2 planes and 2 mountains is pretty tough with that many colors. But 2 and 3 color decks can get to 2 mountains and 2 planes pretty easily. And this thing blows up 2 cards, which is super good. An artifact and an enchantment. And even better is that it's a creature. So you can blink this guy and blow up 2 more things. And white decks, man, white decks have so many ways to blink cards. You're in a pretty good position when you can ephemerate this guy a couple times and you get to blow up a whole bunch of artifacts and enchantments. It's really nice to do. Obviously, this is going to get more value in a deck that has more permanents in it and more blink effects in it. But even then, your comparison card is Wear and Tear. And Wear and Tear is a great card because you can just do 1/2 of the card for a cheaper rate. But if you're going to do both sides, it's 3 mana. It's the same cost as Drugar Hedgemage. But you can blink the Hedgemage. You can bring it back from the graveyard. You can Sun Titan Drugar Hedgemage back into play and blow up 2 more things. You can't do that with Wear and Tear. Wear and Tear is awesome. Don't hear me wrong. But I think a lot more decks will get more mileage out of Drugar Hedgemage than they will from Wear and Tear. The last thing to keep in mind here is that white decks have a lot of ways to deal with artifacts and enchantments, but there aren't a lot of ways to deal with both on the same card. That's a very rare thing in mono white. And what I mean by that is you can hit either artifact or enchantment, but you're not hitting both on most white cards for artifact and enchantment destruction. So take a look at Drugar Hedgemage for your decks. It might make a really good slot filler for removal of these 2 types of cards. I love to compare effects that destroy artifacts and enchantments to Reclamation Sage. That's come up here in a past video as well. There's pros and cons to both. We've talked about the Rec Sage in the past. It's an elf. It's in green. But the nice thing about Drugar Hedgemage compared to Rec Sage is that you can hit 2 targets and destroy both of them versus 1 target with the Rec Sage. So if you like Rec Sage, you're going to like Drugar Hedgemage. And for my last pick here, this actually came out in a commander set way back in 2011, a long time ago. And I don't see it very often at all, but I think it's a really awesome commander and removal card. It's called Spurn Mage Advocate. It's a 1 mana 1/1, which is pretty bad. But it has a tap ability, and the tap ability says return 2 target cards in an opponent's graveyard to his or her hand, then destroy target attacking creature. And this feels very unassuming and not great because there's some prerequisites in order to get the destroy effect. The creature you want to hit has to be attacking, and not all creatures you want to destroy are attacking. And one of your opponents has to have at least 2 cards in their graveyard that you're going to give them back, which is adding more stuff to their hand. But think about this a little bit differently. In a game of Commander, it's not 1v1. So giving 2 cards back to your opponent can be an opponent that you're working together with, or an opponent that has a card that you need cast, but they don't have a way to get it back. Well, you can get it back to them. You just give it to their hand and then destroy an attacking creature. That's pretty sick. You do not have to pick the opponent that is attacking you to give the 2 cards back to. So if I'm being attacked by the archenemy with their big, 2020 commander, I could target them with the destroy effect, that creature, but I could target a different opponent to give them cards back from their graveyard so that we could deal with the archenemy. And archenemy is the extreme. I mean, it could be anything where if we got a 4-player commander, usually it's 2 players fighting each other and the other 2 players are fighting each other. And so if I'm working with the player that's not fighting me and give them 2 cards back, but I'm destroying the player that's coming at me, then I could deal with their attacking creatures. And all you got to do is tap the Spurn Mage Advocate. I definitely would much rather run Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshare compared to Spurn Mage Advocate. But another 1 mana removal spell is not bad. And the nice thing about Spurn Mage Advocate is you could do it more than once. Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshare, they're gone after you cast it 1 time. Spurn Mage Advocate, you could do this every time you tap it. So every turn at the very minimum when you untap on your untap phase, you could blow up another thing that's attacking, which is really sweet. Having this thing just sitting on the board also changes the game of Commander, because now your players have to consider, do I want to attack with this big thing? because the Sperm Mage Advocate could just blow it up anytime it's declared attacking. So any deck you're running against, sort of like battle cruiser decks, which are a very common and popular way to play Magic, they're usually playing cards that are like 4 mana 5/5s, value attackers. They're low mana cost, high power. Well, Sperm Mage Advocate kind of neutralized that. Those players are playing 1 battle cruiser card per turn, and every turn you could just blow it up. Now, you are giving cards back to your opponents from their graveyard, so there's definitely a downside there. You have to pick and choose what cards are going back to what players. But the flip side of that is that you get to return the 2 cards to the opponent's hand. The opponent doesn't pick the 2 cards. So if you pick the opponent that just threw 2 lands in their graveyard, you can give them 2 lands back. You don't have to give them some really crazy, powerful card back because your opponent's not picking the cards that go back in the hand. You are. So you give them their worst 2 cards and then blow up an attacker. It's kind of sick. It's a really interesting card. It's great removal for when you've got decks that are doing attacking. It's a really fun politicking card for players who love to talk with their opponents and, you know, make deals or find creative ways to get things back or do things again. There's even some interesting scenarios. You can imagine this setup happens every now and then where somebody you're playing with who you're working together with to take down this guy who's going to win, they have the card you need to fix the problem in their graveyard. So you could attack with your own token and then target it to get destroyed with Sperm Mage Advocate, but then give the card back to the player who has the card in their graveyard in order to make that happen. So now it's not just a removal spell, it's a recursion spell for your opponents to help you. You just have to convince them to use those cards you give back for things that you want done. It's a cool card. Give it a shot. It's really awesome. I think you'll really enjoy it. It makes for some really interesting scenarios in Commander. The more specialized your card selections get towards your deck's plan, the more interesting and fun your brews become. You up for another round? You might like this one too.